Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we have a slightly different episode for you all. We're going to be looking once again at Marchesa, the Black Rose from Kybor. This is very much specifically a Nazgûl deck. And we're going to take another look at it. There's not many changes in the deck itself. I have one or two notes about it. But Kybor is looking at a few cards that have yet to be released or spoiled, and their additions to the deck. So we don't have a lot to talk about, so I think this will be a shorter episode, but we will take a look at those cards. I will give you all a warning when we get to them, because they are leaks and they are not official. For those who do not like leaks and they don't want to be spoiled in advance, they can shut off the video then. But for the first part of the video, we're going to look at the deck again and kind of talk about why I think this is such a good deck and why I think this is the premier Nazgûl deck. As always, Kybor, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it. And if you guys would like to support the channel and bring a deck list that you want work to be done on yourself to the front of the queue, you can check in the video description for a link to fill out a form and a link to bring your deck list up. While you're there, you can find a link to the deck list here of the Nazgûl Marchesa deck. And you can take a look at it because it's a lot of fun. And I think you will enjoy it quite a bit. And honestly, if you were thinking of playing the Nazgûl, I think this would be the deck to play. I really do believe that. And though we've made a video on this before, and I think we've made a few Marchesa videos now, it's still good. I'll still go over it and explain why I feel that way. So let's take another look at Marchesa, the Black Rose. My second favorite commander version of Marchesa, as Queen Marchesa is near and dear to my heart. But Marchesa the Black Rose is a 4-mana blue, black, red, 3/3 human wizard. She has Dethrone and gives other creatures Dethrone, which means when they attack a player with the most life or tied for most life, they get a +1/+1 counter on it. Please note that unlike another card dear to my heart, Brina, this does count you, so if you get ahead in life, Dethrone will not be able to trigger off of your creatures. But the main reason we play Marchesa the Black Rose is for the effect of whenever a creature you control dies with a +1/+1 counter on it, return that card to the battlefield under your control to the beginning of the next end step. And for those who are, aware of what the Nazgûl do, you may already have figured out the synergy. Nazgûl is a creature that you can have up to 9 copies of. They have Death Touch, and when they enter the battlefield, the ring tempts you. Whenever the ring tempts you, you get a +1/+1 counter on each wraith you control. And so you can think of the Nazgûl as coming in with at least one +1/+1 counter when they enter the battlefield. Therefore, they fulfill the requirement for Marchesa so that if they die, they will be reanimated. And since Nazgûl's ETB affects all Nazgûl, as your Nazgûl die and return into play, the triggers will stack, because it's not enter the battlefield and put a +1/+1 counter on everything. It's that for each Nazgûl, whenever the ring tempts you, you get a +1/+1 on all wraiths. So if you have 2 Nazgûls and you play a third, that third one comes in with 3 +1/+1 counters, and the other 2 get 3 additional +1/+1 counters, which is really, really good and honestly builds up an army incredibly fast. Now, granted, the Nazgûl are a little expensive to collect. They're $10 for at least I'm doing the price adjustment to Canadian, but they're at least $10, $11. $9 it says American here. And with that in mind, one of the things that's tricky about them is that, you got to get a hold of them and you need all 9. If you're like one of those players who wants one of each art, I do get that. Not all arts have the same price. I believe one of them can only be found in a different kind of pack, and I believe that one's more expensive, but I'm not sure. regardless, it might be a bit tricky to get this collection. However, according to this at Card Hoarder, they're 0.08 ticks each. I think that's what it says. So if you wanted to get this in MTGO, this seems to be an affordable deck. And I wonder if there's a price here for the entire deck in ticks if we wanted that. And it doesn't seem to be so. Oh well. I'd be curious to see what this deck is online, because this is definitely something I'd like to build, I think, casually at least, because it seems like a really, really fun deck. All right, so looking at the deck, there's a lot of really good synergies and a lot of really good, methods of the deck to do what it wants. Not only do you have a lot of ways to sacrifice your creatures, you have ways to make copies of your creatures with Phantasmal Image, Glassbull, Mimic, and Pirated Copy, and Spark Double, I should say. We also have, Mask of Mimic to pull extra copies of the card that we have, but our main goal in our creatures is just to play the Nazgûl and get as many of them out. Then we have ways to reanimate those creatures, and a ton of ways in our instance to protect Marchesa and our Nazgûl. The rest of the deck is mainly for, either supporting our Nazgûl or getting card draw or other like setups. And we have a nice amount of artifacts that are relevant. And we're a little low on lands. I will say, I feel like maybe this is just the subject of today, but I do feel like everyone's running a little too few lands. And I will be the first to admit that I am also part of this problem. I also run probably too few lands, and I could increase the amount of lands I generally play. But when you have a 4-mana commander, even with all of these rocks, I think we'd be pretty happy getting to at least 2 more lands to 36, not including MDFC, and I think you'd be a little happier. According to Moxfield, which I'm always unsure if it counts mana rocks, but I do trust it, it says a 62% chance of playing your commander on curve. That means 1 out of 3 times you will not have a 4th land drop. And that's not great, for a deck like this. Even though our curve kind of ends at 3, our deck is very much so empowered by our commander, and therefore we really do want to get her out as soon as possible and as reliably as possible. Now, outside of the land changes, I think if you, the viewer, would like to pick up this deck as is, I think you'd find a lot of success with it. Kybor says that they're still looking for cards to put the deck together, and I would suggest, this is just me, and not to shoot myself in the foot about getting more versions of this deck for a while, I would wait till you have the complete copy before making too many extra changes. One of the things I think it is in our nature as deck builders is to build a deck and then immediately want to change it. The thing is realistically, the amount of testing you'd have to do to fully, grok out how good a deck is way more time than we give it credit for, right? And I'm thinking of 60 card decks where there's 4 of each card, and like this is a 100 card deck with singles, outside of Nazgûl, of course. And to get the full idea of the effectiveness of this deck, to get the full vibe of which cards need to be pulled out and put in, that's games upon games, hours upon hours of playing this deck until you can vibe it out. So with that in mind, I wouldn't rush too much to, take this deck and completely tear it apart when you haven't had a lot of chance playing with it. However, I will say that this deck could be cut down in budget quite a bit for players that are more interested on playing a lower level. There are a lot of, I would say, powerful inclusions, from Dockside Extortionist to the free spells of Deadly Rollick, Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, to Rhystic Study, Necropotence. These cards, even Mystic Remora, these cards are really good black market connections, but you don't necessarily need to play them. I think you can possibly get away with possibly is not even. You could definitely get away with budget inclusions for these cards. Even I'm looking here, we've got a very, very good mana base of fetches, duels, shocks, all that. And if you really wanted to, you could definitely fix that with, like, take out Ancient Tomb and the rest. So if you wanted a cheaper version of this deck, it is very, very doable. I might actually look into that because I am curious to see how much this deck would cost if I were to put it together. Now I wonder, it says some cards can't be bought. Maybe it's because of the versions they are. Interesting. Anyway, because you can definitely get Dimmer Signet online. It must be that this particular version is hard to find. Okay. So there was one addition that Kybor mentioned that they wanted me to take a look at, and this was Footfall Crater. And the argument was Footfall Crater over Crashing Drawbridge. Both of these cards give haste, Crashing Drawbridge to your team, Footfall to one creature. Crashing Drawbridge, of course, is more vulnerable as it is a creature and an artifact, which are the most vulnerable card types in Commander, whereas Footfall Crater is an enchantment, which is harder to deal with, and it is on a land, which makes it a little more vulnerable, which means if I wanted to destroy this card, I could just beast within the land. Not that that's probably going to happen. I don't think there's a lot of cases where your opponents are going to target this with removal, but in addition to it only gives haste to one creature, but it also gives trample. And finally, if needed, you can cycle it away. So what do I think about this change? And honestly, I'm just kind of neutral about it. I don't think it's that intense of a change. It won't really make a big difference for the deck as a whole, but I do want to take note of a change like this, right? Footfall Crater is lower in mana, easier to protect, but serves a different kind of purpose. What is the purpose it serves? Well, Footfall Crater is really good in decks where you have a single strong creature, and Crashing Drawbridge is better in decks where you are playing multiple creatures a turn. Why do I say, well, obviously you know why I say that. One gives haste to everything, the other one gives haste and trample to one thing. But in a deck like this, and I'm just going to leave this question out there, which one do you think is more reasonable or reliable? That you're going to play one big creature a turn? Or are you going to play more than one creature, perhaps two Nazgûl in one turn? I don't think the trample is as relevant as it seems. Kyber was suggesting that if you attack with a really, really big creature, or you attack with a bunch of creatures and they all, except for one, get blocked, you can, or they all get blocked, you can give trample to the Nazgûl with the least blocking toughness behind it. However, I will note that this isn't like a combat trick. This is an ability that your opponents do know you have. Now, granted, your opponents may not pay attention as well, and it is hidden behind one of your lands, so it might be a little tricky, but it's not really a trap. It's more like a way to push through damage. And when we look at this deck, we see that we have better ways to do that, both for mass haste with mass hysteria or just haste in general, or just combining the two. Winged Hive Tyrant works really, really nice of giving your Nazgûl both flying and haste, being just overall a better card. So generally, in my mind, I think of Crashing Footfalls as, Footfall Crater. My goodness, Crashing Drawbridge, Footfall Crater, and Crashing Footfalls is the Rhino card. So Footfall Crater, I feel like it's just okay. It feels like a redundant piece that's going to give haste when we have Mass Hysteria, which is getting a reprint, by the way. I'm sure people saw this. I think it is in a what do you call them? Secret Lair. It's getting a reprint. And that Secret Lair looks sick. I don't really like Secret Lairs, but that one, the art and the text really got me. But that is getting a reprint, which might cut down its price a little bit. You have Lightning Greaves, you have Winged Hive Tyrant. These are all good cards that I do particularly like. So Footfall Craters is like the final, and same with Crashing Drawbridge. They do the same thing. They're just like an additional haste enabler. And for that reason, I'm almost inclined to just say, you know what, cut both and just play a land. You need the lands. this card is not really going to make a big impact. The biggest creature in terms of mana power, like a mana that you have, is Winged Hive Tyrant, and it already has haste, so you don't particularly care for that. And otherwise, it's not like you're giving haste and trample to Yawgmoth, right? I think with a deck like this, you're already getting ahead by creating a very large army of Nazgûl. And remember, large is like 4 of them. And then you will find ways to get your attacks through, right? You can, like, actually, if we're thinking about abilities to give our Nazgûl, the one we'd probably prefer is First Strike, because we know that First Strike Death Touch is incredibly powerful. So if you could find an equipment, which I'm going to say is very, very doable, let's go to Scryfall, and we're going to look at an equipment that gives Trample and First Strike. I think that would be a much better card. And I have one in mind, and I want to make sure I'm thinking of the right one. So let's go Equipment, Trample, First Strike. Ooh, if I could spell strike. First Streak. First Strike. And this is the one I was thinking of. Would you look at that? First Strike, Trample, and Haste. What a nice combination. Now, it only gives it to 1 creature, but it's something worth considering if you wanted to, because if you're replacing Crashing Footfalls, you're replacing something that gives a single card those types, and I feel like this is a very nice combination. Remember, First Strike, Death Touch, and Trample means for each blocker, you only need to assign 1 point of damage, and then the rest of the damage goes to the player. So outside of a token defense, you are very, very happy in order to get through damage. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to do the trample as a surprise. Chariot of Victory will be your chariot to victory on that Nazgûl. Okay, so that's generally the things I wanted to say. I don't think there's anything else. I haven't been thinking of any cards that aren't already in this deck. This deck is very, very well built. It has a lot of the strong cards that we'd want in that. And like I mentioned before, honestly, it has cards that are somewhat overpowered, like, you know, having Dockside Extortionist, all of the free spells. And if you're just building this deck for the Nazgûl deck, you really don't need to play those cards. So it's already at a place that I think it's stronger than it normally would be. So I'm very happy with the deck, and I'm very, very good moving forward with it and hearing how it goes. Warning! We're about to talk about leaks. These leaks are leaks, so they are not necessarily real, but they probably are. And they are going to be leaks of cards that will come in the future that I did not know about until Kybor told me. Now, I don't particularly mind leaks. It is just a part of the game we play, but some people don't particularly like when cards are leaked. And with that in mind, if you're that kind of person, thanks for watching so far. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you like a deck for me to look at, there is a link in the video description below where you can submit a deck and I'll take a look at it. And, you know, while you're down there, you can also bring your deck to the next one on the list like Kybor did, and then I will take a look at it right after that. All right, goodbye. All right, you guys ready for some dirty, awful leaks? Ooh, let's take a look. So I didn't look too much into these, but it has the quality of leaks. Apparently this is, you can see they're kind of, what do you call them, panoramas. So these are 18 cards across 3 panoramas that are going to be released sometime in November, allegedly. This thread comes off MTG Finance on Reddit. I don't really think too much about what they have to say, but the only reason I've also opened this is someone has been gracious enough to put out the transcriptions. There's a few cards that Kybor was looking at, and we'll take a moment to look at them ourselves and see if they would belong in the deck. So let me get out the notes from Kybor in the order that they were looking at the cards. So let's start with Witch King Sky Scourge, which is the card over here. Let's read what it does. It is probably 5 mana, it looks, but When I look at it, it looks like 7 mana. That looks like a 5 to me, but I could be wrong. So definitely between 5 and 7 mana. It is a Wraith Noble flying. Whenever you attack with one or more Wraiths, you exile the top X cards of your library, where X is their total power. You may play those cards this turn. And the Witch King has Undying. What did Kybor say? It's both seems like a great Wraith for the deck and a great way to deck myself out with that effect, since it isn't a May. I'm inclined to agree. It is really strange to me that they would create a Wraith card that is a Nazgûl that in theory people would put into their Nazgûl decks. Let me get back to the art here. That, you know, is so detrimental, so detrimental to the deck itself. Like, don't get me wrong, if this is 5 mana, and I don't really know if it is, if this is a 5 mana 5/5, I think it's very, very reasonable as a commander, provided you don't play the Nazgûl. Like, this is really funny to me, because with a few Nazgûl out, one attack means that you are, let's see what it is, you are, let's say about 15 cards. You're impulse drawing the top 15 cards of your deck. Let me tell you something about impulse draw. Impulse draw does not get that much better in numbers past a certain point. The difference between impulsively drawing 1 card and 3, yeah, that's a big difference. But once you get to like 10, not even, I would say after 5 cards, which is kind of why I like this creature as just a commander, the impulse gets kind of detrimental because you're milling away or exiling away too much of your deck and not being able to play all of it. So what are the cards that you lose when you do this, especially looking at this deck? Well, you lose every land past the first land, and that's assuming you haven't played a land. If you've played a land, every single one of those lands is gone. Every counter spell or defensive spell, so from Undying Malice to Slip Out the Back, to Fierce Guardianship, to Deflecting Swat, all of those are gone forever, and you know, you could use them that turn, but your opponents need to be a little blind to target your stuff that turn, and instead they'll just, you know, they'll just wait for you to do that. You're going to lose every other card you do not have the mana to cast. For example, Insurrection for sure is gone. Blasphemous Act also probably gone, because you probably don't want a Blasphemous Act after having enough of an attacking army to get that many cards. You're the one losing the most of the board. You know what else you're losing? Every Nazgûl you can't cast. Which, if you have like 7 mana and you flip 3 Nazgûl, well, thanks for playing. You've lost a Nazgûl permanently, which is pretty meaningful in your deck. And I don't know if you know this, you have 9 Nazgûl, right? They're the highest chance of flipping off a card like this. And with that in mind, the more I talk about it, the more I just think this card is just an overall detriment to the deck. If it is 5 mana, which once again I'm not convinced that it is, I think it would just be okay in a non-Nazgûl deck. And once again, that's kind of funny for it to be the Witch King. So let's see the next card, Fell Beast of Mordor. This is a 4 mana black flying with Devour 1, and then when it enters the battlefield, target opponent loses X life, you gain X life, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on it. Sorry, this is enter the battlefield or attacks. It's a Titan trigger. This I really like. This I really like because it is a really clean way to sacrifice a bunch of your Nazgûl, get them back at the end of the turn, and then you just have a pretty good beast. Then, because this beast comes with a +1/+1 counter itself, it is guaranteed to reanimate itself should it die, continuing the cycle. So I do believe this works really well in the deck, and I think you'd be pretty happy to include it. I wish it was a Wraith, but you can't have it all, you know, you can't have your way all the time. The next card they suggested was, let's see, Andúril Reforge. Nazgûl Reforge. All right. This is a 2 mana equip I believe that's 4 or 3. Even with glasses, this wouldn't help too much. Let's say 3. It says, whenever equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and if you have the city's blessing, 2 +1/+1 counters on every creature you control. I think this is fine. I think this is pretty strong, but also kind of doesn't belong here. I mean, you don't have a problem putting +1/+1 counters onto your creatures, excuse me, and this looks just a lot more powerful in a generic +1/+1 counters deck. Then let's take a look at Gimli's Reckless Might, which says 4 mana, creatures you have has haste, formidable. Whenever you attack, if creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, target attacking creature you control fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. I don't really like this. I think it's cute, but I don't like it. It has a lot of play that I think is interesting. Giving haste obviously is good. Formidable is feasible to get in a deck like this. Fighting and letting your creature die in order to get another trigger is also kind of fun and cute. But you won't even get it won't reanimate itself till end of turn, so you won't even get the other trigger. Yeah, I don't like it. I think it's one of those. It's not greater than the sum of its parts. And each of the sum of its parts, I would be pretty happy on a lower mana card. And as Kuiper pointed out, this is 4 mana, your commander's 4 mana. I don't think it's going to work. And then, so Isengard Unleashed is the next one, 2 red. Damage can't be prevented. Oh, wow. Damage can't be prevented this turn. If a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals triple that damage instead. Why aren't we just playing the card that gives triple damage? I guess it would be my question. Or there is that one that gives double, I think. What is it, the Convoke one? Let's see, Convoke. Enchantment, Convoke. In red, I think it's the only one. City on Fire. Yeah, why aren't we just playing City on Fire? This has Flashback, which is cute. This is 5 mana. City on Fire is 8, but you can convoke it with a few of your creatures, including Marchesa, who you probably don't attack with. The 3 red is pretty tough. You can't convoke that away. You can, I guess, convoke one of them with Marchesa, but then it's a little tricky. But I just prefer this because it's just permanent. Like, you don't have to worry about flashing it back or having the mana that turn on that attack. So I'm not too impressed by it. I also don't think this is the effect your deck really cares for. You already deal enough damage. And I do recognize, everyone feels, but cursed, triple damage. Yeah, I get that, but it feels pretty win more, I think this is a lot better with triggered damage, like the ETB Perforos style damage or direct damage with bolts and stuff. I don't think this is as good with creatures, even though creatures are the thing that just allows you to cast it. So I don't know. I'm not entirely sold on this. So I think I'm going to say probably, if I don't want to play City on Fire, I don't want to play Isengard Unleashed. Excuse me. All right. So the last one was Minas Morgul Dark Fortress, which is a legendary land that comes in tapped. It taps for black, obviously, and for 3 black, put a shadow counter on target creature. For as long as that creature has a shadow counter on it, it is a wraith in addition to its other types. And the argument here is that you can make Marchesa a wraith. I guess I'm stuck saying and then what? Like, I guess the opportunity cost of this is really low, but like, even if Marchesa, the Black Rose is a wraith, are you still attacking with her? I think I guess she will reanimate herself, but like, even then, like, I think it's opening her up to too much danger. Like, I just don't see this being good. Like, so what this is almost the very definition of win more, right? In order for this card to be good, you need to have your Nazgûl to play. After that, you need to have your commander out, which is to me usually the pinnacle of win more. And then you need to have this card out, and you need, sorry, I'm walking away to pick up my cat, who's being a little troublesome. So you need to have the land out. You need to activate the land while Marchesa is out, and then you need to start playing your wraiths, your ring wraiths or your Nazgûl, in order to start triggering and giving Marchesa +1/+1 counters, an ability that she herself already has. I don't really see it. I see that it's cute and it has a nice little flavor thing about it of Marchesa becoming like the perfect, Nazgûl commander. But like even then, I don't think it's worth the effort. It's a land that comes in that taps for 1 color. It has an ability that only really matters to Marchesa. Like, don't get me wrong, you can summon it, you can put it on a few of your other creatures, but let's remind ourselves, you don't really have other creatures you particularly care about doing this to. You can't use Phantasmal Image because it will destroy itself if you try to do that. And plus those clones are already Nazgûl to begin with. Yogg, I guess you could do it, but even then, like, Yogg's ability is not combat. It is more about him being a sack outlet. Winged Hive Tyrant would be the most interesting one, because then it's like, it would grow really, really, like, it already has the abilities that we want. But then again, it has those abilities because it also gives it to other ones, so we don't even, I guess it's just fine. Carrion Feeder already grows. Like, it just doesn't feel like where the deck wants to be. It's flavorfully fun, but that's kind of where it ends. All right, so was there any one of these I liked? I mean, I'll be honest, I really like the Nazgûl Battle Mace, but maybe not for this deck, but I'll leave other people to go and hunt through this. Yeah, so the Fell Beast is the one I really like. I think that one is really, really strong. The rest, I just don't really see him being good in this deck. So, Fell Beast, if this is a real leak and the cards are real, I would say 100% play the Fell Beast. Otherwise, I guess this is a good fake. But there's your warning end screen. The spoilers are now done. So what do I have to say about Marchesa as we finish up? I continue to like this deck. This is a nice Nazgûl deck. I would suggest to Kybor to kind of build this deck in paper and see how it feels, but I think this is all pretty much a complete deck. The deck is really, really good, and the only thing I would want is maybe a version that's more budget friendly, and then I'd be pretty happy with it, because I think the deck is fun, I think the deck works, and it has a really fun flavor to it. Perhaps this is the kind of deck that's going to one day get a card that just blows the roof off of it, but I can't see any other cards that that really do something that the deck desperately needs otherwise. I think it's already in a really good position. And I think that's where I'll leave it. I hope this analysis was helpful. I hope for those who haven't seen the deck before, they got to see the deck. And I won't do the whole spiel because I did it before the leaks. So good luck, Kybor. Thank you for supporting the channel. And I'm really excited to hear that once this deck is built, how it does. And it just looks so fun to me. I really do like it, and I just want to see it in action or hear about how it is in action, and then we can see if there's a problem within it at that point. Should I have free time in the future? Hint, I don't. I am planning a wedding. If I were to have free time in the future, I think I would make a budget version of this on MTGO and give it a spin, because it does look like a lot of fun, and I think this is the kind of deck that you put on a table and people are pretty psyched to see it in action. All right, good luck with this deck, and I hope to see more of it.